أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا حبيبنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, we're witnessing many things happening around the world. Good, bad, and the ugly. Many people blame Allah for much misery on this earth. And I want to remind you that Allah does not cause misery on this earth. We do. Human beings cause misery on this earth. Human beings are responsible for the troubles and the tribulations that we see befalling humanity at large. And yet, some people think it is Allah's fault. You see, brothers and sisters, today, 20th of January 2017, something very wild and wacky is going to happen. And I want to talk about that and its implications. I wrote an open letter to Donald Trump, the coming up or upcoming president who will be inaugurated today. And I thought I'll give him an Islamic perspective to what I think would make a good presidency. Let me recite the verse of the Quran that I think he should reflect on, and we should all reflect on. The verse of the Quran is, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ. Allah orders you to do good. Allah orders you to be just. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ. He orders you to be just. وَالْإِحْسَانِ. And serve with excellence. وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى. And be compassionate, kind and charitable to those people around you. وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ. And He prohibits you from indulging in fahsha, shameful deeds, munkar, evil, wal-baghi, transgression and rebellion. I'm going to propose to Donald Trump these 6 principles by which he should rule his country. Not just Donald Trump, my brothers and sisters, but every ruler on this earth should take heed and reflect on the verse that I've just recited. So I wrote to him, dear Mr. Trump, congratulations. I know you would be inaugurated as the 45th President of the United States of America. I would like to extend my heartfelt good wishes and prayers for you. I hope you do not mind me writing to you. And I hope you do not mind if your election victory appears in my eyes as the strangest spectacle, as I never thought you were presidential, and I would have never thought that someone of your caliber would ever get elected in my lifetime. I know your victory marks the true and accurate manifestation of a deeply divided USA. Your country's depth of division encompasses politics, society, economics, race, and religion. Your people are living in a nightmare of political abuse orchestrated by the political establishment, who you have very conveniently called your biggest enemy. And at the same time, you've exploited those people very cleverly. Now that you are the president, I sincerely hope that you do not become part of the establishment and forget those people who entrusted their future in your hands. Brothers and sisters, presidents, prime ministers, rulers have a tendency of forgetting what promises that they've made before they came to power. Some of you may be saying, what's the relevance of talking about American election and Jum'ah khutbah today? Well, you know, I believe in addressing the issues of our time. And I believe that is the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ, to address the issues that occupy the minds and hearts of people. Especially issues of global significance, the one that we currently face. So, I want us all to be very clear that I, for sure, have nothing against America or any people in any part of the world. We can't, because we as human beings must love, extend our loving hands and our warmth and our generosity to people all across, because we are all human beings. That is the teaching of Islam. So I have nothing against American people. I have nothing against German people, French people, African people, Bangladeshi people, Pakistani people, people of any part of the world, whatever color, race or religion you have, I have nothing against you. But I have a duty to express my concerns when it impacts me and impacts a global population. Donald Trump's election will impact not just the Americans, but will impact the 7 billion people of the world. And it will certainly impact the 1.8 billion Muslims that live in Muslim majority countries. So I wrote him a letter congratulating him where congratulation is due. He has won an election. However, we need to remind him not to forget those people who have entrusted their faith in his abilities to rule. So I continue in my letter. I wrote, Mr. President, I know your country is a country of stark contrast between richness and poverty, and between opportunities and discrimination, between equalities and inequalities. The poor are getting poorer and rich are getting richer every day. Would you believe, Mr. President, stone's throw from your White House, the Capitol Hill in Washington, live some of the most poor people in America. In fact, you know what? I'm not making it up. I've been there and I've seen it with my own eyes. I've not just seen it with my own eyes and seen what they're doing. In fact, I volunteered in a soup kitchen while I was in Washington. Right next to DC, right next to the Capitol Hill, right next to the White House. I was not very far away. There was a soup kitchen and I was serving the poor and the needy in that soup kitchen, looking at those poor people. You probably, Mr. President, don't even know what it means to sleep hungry or sleep in the open in the freezing winter with snow and cold all around you. You probably don't even know what it means to have a house with no heating, no electricity or no food. But Mr. President Donald Trump, you came to power promising to all these people that you will change their destiny and their fate. I pray you never forget the poor people who voted for you. Brothers and sisters, it is part of our Islamic teaching. When Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu was the Khalif of the Ummah, he used to walk out every night or most nights, early hours of the night, to see his people with his own eyes, to hear their conversations, to see how they're doing and what they're doing. And we know stories upon stories in which Umar's own night expeditions have been recorded. One such I always quote and remember, when he came to a house and from the outside the house he could hear babies crying, and a mother is pottering around and making lots of noise with pots and pans. Umar ibn Khattab became very frustrated and agitated hearing the kids crying for such long period, and mother is just cooking and not feeding them. He knocked on the door eventually and said to the lady, "Why are you children crying and why are you making so much noise and not feeding them?" She said to Umar ibn Khattab, "I don't know who you are. In fact, I don't even think it's important, but you should know that I have no food to feed my children. I'm boiling some water and making noise, hoping that my children will fall asleep out of tiredness and out of crying. And I don't know what my ruler Umar is doing. I am starving and hungry, and my children are going to go to sleep with no food in their stomach. I'm sure he's comfortable in his own palace, in his own home, have fed himself and gone to sleep. Hearing this, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu rushed out of her house, went back to his own, asked one of his companions to open up the storeroom with food. He filled up the bag with food and he said to the companion, lift up the bag on my shoulder. And the companion said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, leader of the believers, let me carry the bag wherever you're going. Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said something very beautiful. He said, with one condition you can carry my bags. That on the day of judgment, you should be prepared to carry my sins too. He left and he came to the lady's house. He gave the lady the bag of food and he sat there. He kneaded the bread and he made the food for the kids and the family. And as they were eating, Umar was crying his eyes out. The lady said to him, you're a strange man. You come and knock on my door. You then go and get some food and now you're crying. What's going on? What's going on? Umar was repenting for remembering that he is the ruler of the Muslim Ummah. And he said in a very famous saying, if one rat was to die in the reign of Umar ibn Khattab, I will be responsible on the day of judgment for why it died. Wallahi, my brothers and sisters, Islamic principles of looking after the poor and the needy is embedded. That's the verse I recited to you earlier on. If Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America, becomes the President, the 45th President of America today, and he looks after his poor and the needy in his own country, he will be a successful person. I sincerely hope, Mr. Trump, that you will never forget those poor people who voted for you, especially from your own home, in New York City, where your Trump Tower is, in Washington, D.C., where your capital city's most powerful house is, White House is. My brothers and sisters, I continued writing my letter and I wrote, Mr. President, I know in your country, your people's ancestors enslaved black people in millions. Your people mercilessly dehumanized, tortured and killed many black people because they stood up against the establishment. They wanted freedom and opportunities. They were cut down like weeds. They were torn to pieces by humans and dogs. And their women were raped in thousands. Even though your country had its first black president, Barack Obama, black people are still the underdogs in your country. They still suffer at the hands of your law enforcement officers. They're still shot, dead in large numbers. They are still incarcerated disproportionately. Mr. President, black people suffer more racism in your country than any other powerful and developed country in the world. And that's a shame and a shameful record for your country and a stain in your country's record. I seriously hope and pray you will change that forever. You will rid the law enforcement officers and agencies of all racism immediately. Brothers and sisters, Prophet ﷺ eradicated racism from the Arab society once and for all at his time with one statement. When he said, no Arab has superiority over non-Arab. No non-Arab have superiority over Arabs. No blacks are inferior to the whites or whites superior over the blacks. All humanity are equal and their brothers. And he said, all of your brothers. And the companions asked, and who can be an Arab or Prophet of Allah? He said, anyone who speaks Arabic, thus destroying the need of lineage, destroying being born in an Arab family to be an Arab, thus destroying the need for nationalism. You can be an Arab just by acquiring a language. Say that to the EDL and Britain First of England. I am English because I speak English. Won't be enough. Tell to the French, I am French because I speak French. Tell the world that nationalism is the curse and the cancer of 21st century, and we need to rid the world of nationalism and all the racism and bigotry that comes out of it. My brothers and sisters, in America, racism is endemic. Black people are no longer, have not been, ever since they've been enslaved, treated as equal human beings. Whoever is the president needs to address this urgently. Mr. President, you need to understand, Islam is a great news for you. Islam will rid America of racism. That's what Malcolm X said. In fact, he was quoting Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Malcolm X said, what America needs today is Islam, nothing else, to rid itself of all racism. Then I wrote to him again, Mr. President, I know you came to power exploiting the deep distrust and division of people. You were able to demonize the Mexicans by assigning them as criminals, rapists, and gang members. You even suggested that you should build a wall between Mexico and America. And you wanted the Mexicans to pay for it. How ridiculous, how laughable. Now that you are becoming the president of the most powerful country in the world, I hope you take a closer look at your own self. You know why? Because you are the closest neighbor of Mexico. Your country has failed to love its neighbor as Jesus would have wanted all Christians to do. And since you claim to be a Christian country, you have failed your neighbors in Mexico. You've exploited your neighbors' resources for decades. Now that you find no more resources in that country, you decide to erect a wall and blame them for all your ills. I hope you would find and do the Christian thing, and that is love your neighbor, and that is extend a helping hand to build your neighbor's life and not create a barrier to dampen their spirit. I know, brothers and sisters, blaming others never solves our problem. Never will, never did. I want you to know and note that the ills of America isn't because of Mexicans. Ills of America isn't because of anybody else but its own self. We're responsible for our own misery. No point blaming Mexicans or the Muslims or in some cases God. No. Take responsibility and sort your own house. Take a page from Quran and the verse that I recited, Mr. Donald Trump. Your country and the country would be better. Establish justice. Establish excellence, compassion and fairness for all people. Rid the world and your country of shamelessness, evil, and transgression. I wrote, Mr. President, I know you have derided women, viewed them as sexual objects, and used them for your perverted pleasures. I know some of these women would come to haunt you throughout your presidency by filing lawsuits and throwing muck at you. I know it's going to happen. I know human beings can be weak and fall victims of their own lower desires. Whatever you have done, you should rethink your attitude towards women. Mr. President, they are your mothers, they are your sisters, they are your wives, and they are your daughters. They are our mothers, they are our sisters, our wives, and our daughters. Your intolerable statements, your misogynistic statements, your derision of women is not acceptable by anybody. If you continue objectifying women, you're only objectifying your own mother, your own sister, your own wife, and your own daughter. In fact, the solution is start by including more women in your cabinet. Did you know currently he has proposed 22 people in his cabinet? Out of them, only 4 are women. It doesn't show well, especially for a country that lectures all of us about human rights, equalities, and women's rights. I pray that you will begin by apologizing to all women of the world for the misogynistic statements you have made, for the derision that you have offered them, and for the insults that you have thrown in their direction. Your utter misogyny is not acceptable. I pray that women would forgive you. Brothers and sisters, in Islam, we respect our woman for being a co-partner on this earth and co-partners in our paradise in the hereafter. We respect women for being Allah's creation, just like you and me and everybody. We don't look down upon women. We don't objectify women. We don't look at them as sexual objects. We honor them and respect them. Mr. Trump should take a lesson from Islam and the life of the Prophet. And then I wrote, brothers and sisters, Mr. Trump, that yes, some Muslims may have been responsible for misogyny just like you, Mr. Trump. But you won't banish yourself. You won't call yourself a misogynistic. Why blame Islam or the Muslims for anything of the same? For Islam certainly honors woman and honors man. May Allah strengthen us all and give us the strength and eloquence to express ourselves to the world. Amen. And bring to the world the true message of Islam. Amen. And invite the world so that the world can see that we as people wish well for everybody, and Islam is actually the solution to the troubles in the world. وآخر الدعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Brothers and sisters, I recited the verse of the Quran that every Imam recites in his khutbah. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي. Allah orders you to be just. Allah orders you to be excellent. Allah orders you to be compassionate, kind, and charitable to people around you. And He orders you against evil. He orders you against shamelessness. And He orders you against rebellion and transgression. So I wrote to Mr. President Donald Trump, I know you have derided and ridiculed Muslims and proposed a ban on all Muslims coming to the United States of America. I've also heard recently that you have revised your proposal, that you would only wish to ban Muslims from your terror watch list countries. Let me remind you, Mr. Trump, that you and your country, actually your country's founding fathers, were more versed in Islam than you. In your Congress library, there are names of people who have influenced the founding principles of the United States of America. These names are etched on the walls for all to see and celebrate. Amongst these honorable names appears the name of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Blaming Muslims will not solve the problem, the global problem of extremism and terrorism. To be absolutely frank, Islam has not created the problem at all. It is your country's greed-driven economic policies and your unethical foreign policies that have caused proliferation of extremism and terrorism in the world. Let me give you examples. Illegal war in Iraq caused the death and destruction of thousands of people, if not millions. Invasion of Afghanistan, blunders across the globe, including Somalia. And believe it or not, America now bombs more countries in the world per day than ever before using its drones, killing wedding parties, people who are praying, even funeral processions Mr. President Donald Trump, your blind support of Israel and your failure to create collective coalition to save the lives of Syrians are all part of the proven troublemaking policies of your country. If you truly want to change the world, take a closer look at your own home. Mr. Trump, honestly speaking, your suggestion that Israel should become the capital city of Israel, Jerusalem should become the capital city of Israel, would embolden Israel to continue building more of its illegal settlements in Palestinian land, and would inspire and fuel the extremists from all backgrounds to plan further heinous acts of terror globally. So I wouldn't blame Islam or the Muslims for it. Blaming Islam or the Muslims is not going to solve the problem. If Mr. Trump, you want to claim to be the most powerful country in the world, then clean up your own acts at home. Stop funding and supporting wars, dictators, despots, and occupations and illegal settlements in the world. Stop supplying the world's rogue leaders with lethal weapons. Stop the terrible game of exploitation of the world. You should not be spearheading unethical foreign policies. I urge you to take an approach based on global interest of the world's population, moral values and human rights of all people. Brothers and sisters, I want you to be very clear. As a Muslim, you have a duty and a responsibility to speak the truth. Not to be shy. Don't worry about your visa. Don't worry about it. I lost mine. They promised to give it back. Speaking the truth should always remain the primary principle of our living. Let me tell you and remind Mr. Donald Trump to finish off. I know during election campaign, the more outrageous statements you made, the more popular you became. But we all know that you did not become a president through a majority of the votes of the public. But you came a president because of the archaic, backward electoral colleges. I'm sure history will decide the outcome. And I'm sure American people will choose if they want to change their system. But it is the reality of today that Donald Trump is going to be the 45th president of the United States of America. And you and I will have to accept it and respect the outcome, the choice of people, and give him the opportunity to deliver on his promises. But that should not keep you silent from telling the truth, telling him how things should be. I have 5 requests to make only from Donald Trump. Number 1, they should rule his country using the principles of fairness, justice, excellence, and compassion. Simple. Just be fair with everybody. Number 2, Mr. Trump, you should end discrimination and inequality in your country right now. Black people, Mexican people, Hispanic people, people of all parts, Arabs, Indians, they're all human beings. Give them the honor and dignity they deserve. Number 3, you should unite the people of your country and lead them by examples of love and humility, not arrogance and outlandish behavior. Number 4, you should end your foolish habits of making outrageous and insulting comments about everybody. Making everyone your enemy doesn't help you. A leader doesn't do that. And finally, you should take more measured and ethical foreign policy approach to see the world become better. It's not too much to ask. My brothers and sisters, everything that I have said today, every word of what I've said has been inspired by the verse I recited in the beginning. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ. Allah orders you to be just and fair, compassionate, excellent and compassionate, and to stay away from evil, shamelessness, and transgression. If Donald Trump and all the rulers of the world, Muslims and none, were to follow the principles of justice and fairness, were to follow the principles of compassion, were to follow the principles of excellence, were to invite their people to stay away from shamelessness and evil and transgression, the world would be a better place.